I never thought I'd see my name on the eviction notice, but there it was, taped to the door of my tiny rented room, fluttering a little in the stale hallway air, like a cruel official joke. I didn't feel rage. I didn't feel panic. I felt this deep, heavy, crushing silence, a silence you only get when the last domino falls. My whole life, right there, summed up in one piece of cheap paper. $2,400 past due. It wasn't a mountain of debt. It was a molehill I hadn't been able to climb. It was the final proof that I had failed. Failed my parents. Failed my fiancée before she became my ex. Failed myself. My name is Alex. For 10 years I was invisible. Truly invisible. My job was to make things disappear. Dust, smudges, coffee stains, fingerprints. I was a janitor. I worked the late shift from 8 p.m. to 4 a.m. at Merrick & Company. Merrick & Company wasn't just any building. It was a temple. A cathedral of cash. A towering palace of glass and steel right in the heart of downtown. They traded in millions, billions. And I was the guy who cleaned up their paper plates after their late-night sushi delivery. I knew the place better than anyone. I knew the smell of desperation after a bad quarter. I knew the cold, sterile scent of success when a deal closed. I knew which desk had the messy eater and which one had the analyst who cried into his keyboard around 2 a.m. I moved like a ghost, broom in hand, cart squeaking softly, a background sound, an afterthought, and that was fine. I liked the dark. I liked the silence. It was better than facing the light and having to admit what I was. Or more accurately, what I wasn't. I wasn't an MBA. I wasn't a prodigy. I wasn't rich. I was a man whose one big dream, to run a small, honest construction business, had collapsed. Took my savings. Took my credit. Took my self-respect. The janitor job was survival. Nothing more. Then one Tuesday night, everything changed. I was on the 42nd floor, the executive suites, polishing the massive mahogany desk of Mr. Julian Vance, the chief investment officer. This desk was immaculate. A museum piece. Except for one thing. A single, thick binder lay open. A forgotten report. I shouldn't have touched it. I knew the rules. But the title page was facing up. Quarterly Derivatives Analysis. Project Chimera. I glanced down the hall. Empty. Just the hum of the server rooms. I reached out and gently closed the binder. I was about to place it neatly on the corner. But a single handwritten note on the margin of a page caught my eye. A circle around a number. A small, confused-looking question mark. Curiosity is a dangerous thing. Especially for the invisible. I slowly opened the report again. I read the numbers. I scanned the columns. My brain isn't built for derivatives. It's built for concrete, for framing, for torque. But there was something off. Something jarring. The numbers on the left side, the inputs, were being subtracted from the numbers on the right. Column A minus column B equals column C. Simple math. But on this line, the one with the handwritten question mark, column C was too big. It was off by $8.4 million. A single 8-figure mistake. It was an error of subtraction. The kind a tired high schooler makes. But this wasn't high school. This was Merrick & Company. This wasn't a practice problem. This was the blueprint for millions of dollars in investment. My heart started to pound a slow, heavy rhythm against my ribs. I stared at the number. $8,400,000. I picked up the abandoned Vance desk pen. My hand was shaking. I did the simple subtraction on a sticky note. Twice. 3 times. The report was wrong. It wasn't a sophisticated trick. It wasn't genius-level insight. It was a slip-up. A typo in a spreadsheet's formula. But it was a mistake they were about to execute on. And it was mine to find. I taped the sticky note to the page. And I walked away. My cartwheels now seemed deafeningly loud. I didn't tell my supervisor. I didn't call the security line. Why? Because I knew what would happen. They would praise the sharp-eyed janitor. They would fix the error. And they would forget I existed the next morning. But that single moment, seeing my simple calculation correct where their entire teams was wrong, ignited a spark. A tiny, vicious little thought that maybe, just maybe, my brain wasn't as broken as my bank account. I went home to that empty room with the eviction notice still taped to the door. And I couldn't sleep. I had found a flaw in the system. And I decided I wasn't going to fix it for them. I was going to use it to fix my own life. The next day I didn't quit my job. I couldn't. But I stopped being just a cleaner. I became a spy. A sponge. I cleaned slower. I listened closer. I took the tiny, torn-out pages of financial journals from the overflowing trash cans. I straightened the wrinkled printouts of economic forecasts. I wasn't stealing secrets. I was scavenging knowledge. It was my new obsession. I had my mop and my bucket. But now, tucked in the bottom of my cart, I had a worn-out, borrowed library book on corporate finance. I used the firm's ultra-fast Wi-Fi once everyone was gone to watch free lectures on YouTube about the stock market. I learned about PE ratios while wiping down the break room microwave. I learned about diversification while scrubbing the toilet stalls. It was exhausting. I'd work 8 hours. Then I'd get home and study for 4 more. 4 hours of trying to stuff a decade of financial education into a brain already fried from scrubbing grout. I was running on maybe 3 hours of sleep a night. I started to get addicted to the knowledge. It wasn't money yet. It was power. The power of understanding. I'd see some hotshot analyst, mid-30s, perfectly tailored suit, talking loudly on his phone about a hedge fund strategy. A month ago that would have been Greek. Now I could hear the flaws in his plan. I could see the risk he was understating. And I just keep sweeping my face blank. This was my secret life. My second shift. My boss, Hector, a good man who'd been there 30 years, started to worry. "Alex," he said one morning, handing me my paycheck. "You look like a zombie. Are you sick?" "No," I mumbled. "Just a lot on my mind." What was on my mind was the eviction notice I had taped back up in my room, now covered by 3 pages of my own handwritten notes on bond yields. The financial pressure was a constant, low-grade fever. I was making minimum wage plus a tiny cleaning bonus. I was barely covering my existing small debt payments and food. And the interest was killing me. A little bit every month. It was like running a marathon where the finish line was moving backward. One night, I found a printout near the recycling bin. It was an internal report on a company called Greenstream Energy. The firm was about to dump their stock. The report said their technology was unproven and volatile. But I had just spent a week studying clean energy patent filings on a free government database. And I knew the key patent they were dismissing, the one for Greenstream's new battery tech, was actually a game changer. The analysts, I realized, were looking at the past quarter's earnings. They weren't looking at the future potential the patent unlocked. They were lazy. They followed the herd. They didn't dig. It was a profound moment of humiliation and clarity. These highly paid geniuses, the ones who walked past me every day like I was a piece of furniture, weren't smarter than me. They were just better funded. They had the access. I had to find my own access. I pulled out my phone. It was old. Cracked screen. I had exactly $1,500 left. That was my emergency fund. My last lifeline before I had to call my sister. The one person I refused to let down again. I took $1,000 of it. I opened a tiny, almost hidden online brokerage account, the kind aimed at retail investors with $100 balances. My hands were shaking worse than they had been when I was fixing that $8.4 million mistake. This wasn't sweeping a floor. This was real. I bought Greenstream Energy. $1,000 worth. If I was wrong, I was done. Evicted. On the street. The next 3 weeks were hell. I would sneak peeks at my phone between mopping strokes. The stock did nothing. It dipped. I lost $100. My stomach cramped. I wanted to sell. I wanted to crawl back into my corner and just clean until I died of boredom. The fear was a heavy, cold blanket. Then the 4th week. The news broke. Greenstream's battery patent was approved by a major utility regulator. The stock exploded. It went up 40%. Then 60%. Then on Friday it closed at double what I paid for it. I turned $1,000 into $2,000. It wasn't millions. It wasn't life-changing. But when I stood there in my tiny room staring at the number on the screen, I didn't see $1,000. I saw proof. Proof that my mind worked. Proof that the risk was worth the effort. Proof that I could understand this complex, cruel world of finance. And I knew I couldn't stop. I had to go bigger. The problem wasn't just my debt. The problem was the system, the one that kept guys like me down. The one that charged us exorbitant interest rates and offered us terrible advice. I was finally seeing the game. And I had $2,000 to play with. But I wasn't going to play alone. I was going to find the other invisibles. The idea hit me while I was wiping down the elevator buttons. I thought about Hector. 30 years of sweat. He still rented. I thought about Maria, the security guard who worked 3 jobs to send her son to community college. They were doing everything right. They were working hard. But they were all still invisible to the financial world. No one offered them a low-fee investment plan. No one showed them the long-term charts. They were told to save, save, save. And their savings earned a pathetic fraction of a percent. I decided my victory couldn't just be my own. It had to be ours. I started small. Too small to be professional. Too informal to be illegal. I called it the Late Shift Ledger. It was a tiny, private, unorganized group of 3 people, me, Hector, and Maria. I laid it out for them in the building's hidden sub-basement break room. Fluorescent lights buzzing over a stack of greasy cardboard boxes. Look, I said, my voice barely a whisper. I'm not a pro. I'm not certified. I'm still the janitor. But I know what I've seen. And I know what I've learned. I showed them my trading account. The $2,000. I found a mistake they were making. I saw an opportunity they ignored. I used $1,000 and made it $2,000. Hector's eyes were wide. Maria was skeptical. Alex, she said, her voice heavy with fatigue. That's gambling. We can't afford to gamble. It's not gambling, I insisted, tapping a worn-out printout of an S&P 500 chart. Gambling is hoping. This is about understanding the language they use to keep us out. We pool our money. We pick high-quality, long-term assets. We don't chase quick wins. We leverage what they overlook. I told them about the dignity of our labor. The fact that our money was just as real as Mr. Vance's. Maria finally broke. She pulled out a crinkled envelope. $500. This is all I can lose, she said. Hector, bless his weary heart, gave me $1,500. His entire tax refund. That moment was the true turning point. It wasn't my $1,000 profit. It was the trust. It was the feeling of holding their hard-earned money in my hand. It wasn't just my life I was risking anymore. It was theirs. That weight, the responsibility, it was terrifying. But it was also focusing. I worked harder than ever. The stakes were too high for a quick score. I was playing for their retirement. I stuck to the basics, value investing. I started looking for companies with strong balance sheets, but that were out of favor because of some temporary bad news, the kind of news the big firms would overreact to. I focused on sectors I saw every day: infrastructure, logistics, public utilities. Stuff that kept the real world running. I read annual reports like they were novels. I read the footnotes, that's where the truth always hid. And slowly, painstakingly, the late shift ledger started to grow. Maria's $500 turned to $700. Hector's $1,500 turned to $2,100. We weren't getting rich. We were getting ahead. The real victory wasn't the money. It was the attitude. Maria started asking me about treasury bonds. Hector started reading the business section of the paper. We became a community of learning. We started adding other janitors, other security guards, a couple of the firm's mailroom clerks. The late shift ledger wasn't just 3 people anymore. It was 12. We met in the sub-basement every Thursday night. We called it class. I'd stand up there, my face still tired, my shirt smelling faintly of cleaning chemicals, and I'd explain things like compounding interest and the power of a low-cost index fund. I was teaching the financial literacy I had been denied. I was becoming the mentor I had searched for. My own $2,000 grew to nearly $8,000. I paid off the eviction debt. The notice came down. I slept better. But my biggest fear was still Julian Vance, the CIO. What if he found out? What if they realized the invisible man was leveraging the secrets he was learning in their hallways? The day of the climax was inevitable. One rainy afternoon, about a year after I found the $8.4 million mistake, I was cleaning Mr. Vance's office. I was wiping dust off a framed photo of his sailboat. He stayed late. Something he rarely did. He was on the phone, his voice tight, stressed. "It's not good, Mark. The Mulligan Group is shorting us. They know we have to liquidate the Petrocorp position by end of quarter." He hung up. He looked haggard, defeated. He ran a hand over his face. Then he looked up and saw me. The janitor. The invisible man. He sighed deep and weary. "Tough day, Alex," he said, using my name for the first time in a year. I nodded. I kept polishing. "We're about to lose a lot of client money," he admitted, almost to himself. A massive, predictable correction we didn't see coming. I paused my polishing. The moment hung in the air. I knew the Petrocorp situation. My group had analyzed it months ago. Petrocorp had a big environmental lawsuit pending. Merrick and Company was holding too much of it. The Mulligan Group, a rival firm, was timing a massive short sell, betting the stock would crash. They knew Merrick was forced to sell low to cover their own mistakes. It was a classic, brutal move. I gripped my dusting cloth. "Sir," I said, my voice low, "if you sell Petrocorp, the Mulligan Group wins." He blinked, stunned. You finally saw me. Excuse me? You don't have to liquidate, I continued, the words coming out fast now. You can hedge. You can buy a long-dated option on Terra Nova Fuels. Petrocorp is going down, but Terra Nova is their direct competitor. When one falls, the other climbs. You'll offset the loss. I said it all in one breath, like reciting a theorem. He stared at me. His perfectly tailored suit suddenly looked wrinkled. Terra Nova is a small cap. It's too volatile, he stammered. Not anymore, I countered. Look at their last filing. They secured the government contract for the Southwest Pipeline. Petrocorp was relying on that contract. The market hasn't factored it in yet. It'll hit Monday. Silence. Just the hum of the air conditioning. He didn't look at me like a janitor anymore. He looked at me like an anomaly. He slowly reached for his computer. He pulled up the Terra Nova filing. He read the lines I had told him to read. The ones everyone else ignored. His face went pale. He turned back to me. How do you know this, Alex? I put the dusting cloth away, placing it gently on my cart. I clean up everything you leave behind, sir, I said. And I don't follow the herd. I follow the footnotes. I looked him straight in the eye. Your mistake isn't losing money. Your mistake is thinking you're the only person in this building who can read. I picked up my mop. My shift was ending. Have a good evening, Mr. Vance. I walked out of the office. I didn't hear what he did next. I didn't care. Because my victory wasn't in him making the trade. My victory was in the understanding. In the ability to see the board clearly. I had proven my knowledge not for an MBA, not for a job interview, but for myself. The next Monday I didn't get fired. I didn't get promoted. I got something better. Mr. Vance called my supervisor. He didn't mention the trade. He just said, Alex is to be given the utmost respect. He's one of the sharpest minds in this building. That was all I needed. My life didn't change overnight. The late shift ledger kept meeting in the sub-basement. We weren't trying to beat Wall Street. We were trying to emancipate ourselves from it. And we did. My personal account grew enough to finally start my original dream. A small, honest construction business. I used the investment group's profits, not for a lavish office, but for a down payment on a small workshop. I was my own boss. I was building things again. And I never forgot the late shift. I kept the late shift ledger going. It now has 30 members. It's still not a registered fund. It's a collective, a self-help group with money on the line. We meet in a real office now. A cheap, rented space above a laundromat. I didn't become rich. I didn't get an executive title. I became free. And that's worth more than all the money in that glass tower. I learned that dignity isn't given to you, it's earned in the dark. It's earned on 3 hours of sleep, studying a balance sheet while everyone else is out partying. It's earned by trusting your own quiet intelligence when the world tells you to be quiet and invisible. So, if you feel overlooked, if you feel dismissed, if you're the last one to leave the building every night, remember this: the greatest secrets aren't kept in safes. They're left in plain sight. And the people who are truly looking, the ones who truly understand the value of what's been discarded, are usually the ones who are doing the cleaning. Start looking. Start learning. Your shift is about to begin.